know something, John?
Yeah.
I have had the privilege of eating pizza in many different parts of the world, but no pizza is as satisfying and as tasty as pizza here in Canada.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah. I've had a pizza, let's see, in France, in Austria, in Hawaii, except even there I didn't have pineapple on that because anybody who has pineapple on pizza is a charlatan and needs to
Mm-hmm.
no, I'm kidding. I've never actually ever tried it, but anyways, yeah, I just bring that up because I was eating pizza before we started, and we actually do have a company here called Pizza. And then whenever somebody's like, "Hey, you want some pizza from Pizza?" It's like, you know, have you ever heard of this band called The Who? And they're like, "Who?" And anyways, you get the point. Welcome.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyways, welcome to another edition of the Differently Wired Show, everybody. My name is Max Derrat. I am, of course, your friendly neighborhood Simpsons kin. And John, I hear people talking in the background.
Hmm.
I think you might have your stream open. Can you just mute it?
Don't know. Okay.
Because I can hear my
Okay.
voice echoing on your side.
How is that sounding?
Oh, I think it's good now. I think it's good. All right. And anyways, the aforementioned John, I will give him a proper introduction. He is PhD. He is one of those charlatans that puts pineapple on pizza.
I wouldn't dream of putting pineapple on pizza. Actually, I wouldn't put pineapple on anything.
No, you don't like pineapple?
Well, it raises your blood sugar level really fast. It's really sweet. Pineapple.
Oh, you're one of those health guys. Okay. All right. Yeah. He's got to talk down to us for the entire show. He is John Tucker. John, what's happening?
I'm sitting here contemplating pizza and pineapple and drinking plain water.
A modern day Kierkegaard, I can tell.
There you go. It's all in the head.
It's all in the, yeah, exactly. How's it going, John?
It's going wonderfully well. We've had a respite here from the terrible storm we had last week, and our lawn is green again for a few days.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, there's no below zero temperatures. It's absolutely
Oh,
ridiculous there's snow this early on in the year. I can't remember the last time it snowed this early, as much as it did in November. But you guys, we don't want to further the stereotype about Canadian weather. There is a lot of hot days up here. Before we get into the usual stuff, I just want to acknowledge that a very handsome, intelligent man put in a $2 super chat. His name is Point Curation. He does this a lot. He just says, "I accept you to the max." Oh, that's the only way that
beautiful.
you should accept people. Thank you very much for that, Point Curation. I really do appreciate it. Excuse me. So let's just get all the usual stuff out of the way. First of all, Facebook page, like it, yada, yada, yada. Do it or you're a bad person. Discord, we... Okay. No. Discord server. John, I put out a video pretty much exactly a week ago called The Truth About Anxiety. And in it, I plugged the Discord server, telling people that if you're going through anxiety and you need somebody to talk to, we do have the Discord server available for you there. Well, at the time when we did the show last week, we had 800 members, and right now we have 855 members. So that's a really, really nice boost. Thank you to everybody that joined. I hope you're enjoying your stay there. Let me just get my mic audio here. Hopefully I'm not too low. But yeah, anyways, the Discord server, absolutely lovely place to be. One of my lovely moderators, Sean, he actually just wrote me before we started the show, no joke, and saying, "Dude, thank you so much for this server. It's such a great place to be." And I said, "Thank you for being a part of it and moderating it." So if you want a place to go where you can talk with people that are like-minded like you, or you want to talk about my videos, I love it when people talk about me, make me feel important. I just go there. Also,
does it help you accept yourself?
Yes, it does help me accept myself. It just
There you go.
it just gives me more fuel to pat myself on the back. Subscribe star campaign. So, should I say this right now? Well, anyways, Subscribe Star campaign. It's kind of like Patreon in case you guys don't know what Subscribe Star is, where you can go support creators of your favorite content on YouTube. I have one. There's a link to my Subscribe Star campaign down below. If you have the financial means, I would appreciate you at least taking a look at the campaign. There are various rewards depending on how much you donate, like There's movie night. There's access to my gamer tags. You can get access to an exclusive Minecraft server, as well as the audio version of this podcast. And also, um, one of the rewards that I would like to bring up is the fact that there's an after show. There is an after show just right after we finish the Differently Wired show every week where you can come in and hang out with me. Now, unfortunately, I won't be able to do the after show tonight because I have an appointment with somebody. But in order to make it up to the people that do join me for the after show, I'm going to let you guys know right now. Well, I'm not going to let you know, but I'll tease it. Black Friday is next Friday, not this Friday coming, but after that. And what I plan on doing in celebration of that, and out of love for all you beautiful people, is offering some discounts for some temporary discounts on my Subscribe Star campaign so that if you've been thinking about donating but aren't sure, hopefully those discounts will entice you. I won't tell you what those are right now, but look out for it. So, with all that out of the way, let's get to the main topic of the show. Self-acceptance. Accepting yourself. John, this was recommended to us by one of our regular Discord users, actually somebody that I think has been with us since the inception of the server. Her name's Camilla, and she's a absolutely lovely person to talk to on the server, as I'm sure everybody will attest. This is actually something that I think pretty much anybody that is differently wired struggles with, and is it safe to say that it's something that a lot of people never really can fully attain? Like, what do you think, John?
It's kind of tricky to um, be fully self-accepting. The Dalai Lama says, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. So the root of self-acceptance is a gentleness of judgment. So nowadays, we're fond of seeing on the web and on Facebook and on newscasts people showing how bad something is, like the negativity thing you were trying to counter with your positivity channel. Um, but we see an awful lot of look how good I am, or look how bad she is, or look how bad he is, shaming, shunning, and so on and so forth. So compassion is nowhere near anything like that. When you practice compassion, you have compassion for somebody who makes a mistake, as well as somebody who didn't make a mistake. You try to have the same compassion. You try to understand, well, this person did a really bad thing. Maybe something bad happened to make that do that. So instead of going on the attack, you kind of are more gentle about it. Now, all the religions, most of the religions that I know of, teach that kind of approach to the world of, of gently assessing, gently judging, not judging at all, really. Uh, but here's the trick. In our zeal to show how wrong somebody is or how wrong something is, we end up being our own victims because we're in the world of judgment and conflict and winning or creating losers. So when we're in that world, when something goes wrong in our life, we turn in on ourselves and we kind of don't give ourselves a break. Now, if you're differently wired, and if you've had a lifetime of people misjudging you or giving you short shrift on something or making you hurry up or judging you in some way, and you're sensitive, you've got an awful lot of reasons for yourself to turn in on yourself. And it's really difficult to practice this self compassion, which I think is the key to self acceptance. You can say, oh, I'm okay, I'm okay, but you got to kind of work at being gentle. Now, there's a technique that has occurred to me in my coaching work that sometimes can work, and that is you step outside yourself, figuratively speaking, and you say, well, if I am not me, if I'm somebody else, how would I judge this act? Well, you know what you did, you know what happened, you know the rationale, you know the problem. So you can be a little bit more compassionate when you're not like um, all emotional about this terrible thing. Oh, I'm afraid to do this, or I hate to do that, or I feel weak, or I feel small. What's wrong with me? Oh, when will I ever do? All this negative self talk turns us down. So you kind of step away from that. You kind of, in a way, objectify it so you can um, learn to accept yourself. Now, it is one of the most difficult things. And the most difficult thing you can face is sometimes accepting yourself, accepting what you did, accepting yourself for things that aren't your fault anyway, because it's really hard to locate a locus point. It's you were born the way you are. You ended up in circumstances that you're in, and you feel bad about that, and you can't really change that. So I guess the key, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before, the key is when you do stuff, you do the things, you think about the things within your power. And if they're not within your power, you have to kind of turn away from it. I can't do anything about world peace. I think I said this last week. I can't do anything
Hmm.
about the elections in America and so on. But it bears saying a lot, because if you're living in the present moment and you're looking at what's in front of you and controlling or doing what you can do, it gives you a lot more peace. And
Hmm.
therefore, you have the chance of accepting yourself. But the key is accepting others too. You can't hate everybody and accept yourself, because that's a whole different kind of mindset.
Yeah. You can't dwell in all the various reasons why you shouldn't accept yourself, because ultimately when you do that, you're in that headspace of negativity, and
Yes,
everything just becomes a completely self-fulfilling prophecy. And
yes.
now, like you said, it's like when you articulate it like that, it sounds like such a easy problem to solve, but ultimately, every human has their irrational side, and it becomes a whole lot more difficult.
Hmm.
So there's that side of it that's really difficult. So how do you get to the point where you can be maybe not entirely, but more efficient in your self acceptance? Um, well, there's one potential obstacle that I can think of when getting to a better place, and one is being able to determine, as you sort of alluded to, and what you were saying there, John, is uh, sorry, are you writing something down?
I was.
Okay.
So do I need to use a softer pencil?
Yeah, sorry. It's like it's just like when it was so weird when you were writing and when I was talking. It's like I could see myself writing the words down in my brain. There was sort of a weird momentary thing. Um, yeah, when it comes to self acceptance and being able to get there, there's plenty of opportunities for you to go down the wrong path, because as we see a lot today, especially in our modern day culture, is there's a tendency for people to be self accepting in the wrong ways. People are having trouble being able to differentiate between things that are within their control and things that aren't in their control. And oftentimes people will just say that, hey, I have this whatever it is, a disability, a different wiring in my brain, and I don't want to do anything about that. What, like, do you sort of see that often in, like, obviously don't name names, but do you see that sort of attitude often in your clients or in people that you know? And if you do, like, what are some strategies that you employ to try to get them to go down the right path of self acceptance?
Okay, well, there is, in the language you just used, there is a trap. And the trap is that you use the word right, the phrase right path. And here's why this is a trap.
Hmm.
If I think I know your right path, I'm going to nudge you toward a direction that I think you should go down. We got a problem, because that isn't the path you want. It's the path that I think you should want. A lot of the problems we have in relationships stem from others thinking they know what is good for you and trying to push you into doing stuff. In families, this happens a lot. You have a child, you think, oh, he should do this and he shouldn't do that and he should do something else. And therefore, there's tension because he doesn't think that that's the case. So, all right, let me go back. The question shouldn't be the wrong path. I think, from my point of view, it should be the maybe appropriate path or your best choice of a path. So,
Mm.
in other words, you're helping the other person identify what they need and what they want. Now, you can make mistakes. I guess in that regard, if what they want is something bad and hurtful to others. So that would be a dangerous thing. You'd have to stop that. But in terms of choices, for the most part, should I do this in my career? Should I do that? Well, there is no wrong path. So a lot of the things that people have chosen are simply choices which don't have big value on them. They're just things they choose to do. So let them do it. What difference? So do you know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
judgment built into our language. You should do this. You should raise your child this way. You should go to that school. You should do this. You should do that. You should prearrange your funeral. All that should stuff makes us tense and anxious and stressful. And the world of should generates a lot of anti self acceptance.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I actually have pre-planned my funeral. I want Inagata Devita to be playing. Uh, that's been consistent since I was what, like 13 years old. Um,
Really? That's great.
yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, what was I about to say? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, John. See, when you try to enforce these positive paths on people, it's sort of there are times when certain suggestions don't necessarily work, and when you're so beholden to those suggestions, like when maybe a parent suggests something to their child that is differently wired, they might become resentful, and then everything just gets
Mm, almost
continuously worse.
always.
Yeah, absolutely.
Almost always.
So the one thing, however, though, that I think should be consistent when it comes to recommending pathways forward towards self-acceptance is to make sure that when people are trying to help you, whether it's like a professional that you're talking to or your parents that you're talking to or whoever's trying to help you, you have to be honest with them and you have to be honest with
Mm,
yourself, because otherwise, if you're not constantly evaluating these things to move yourself forward and you let certain things that you don't like sort of just take over your life without any protest, like I said, things just get worse. So in regards to uh, getting towards total self acceptance, John, what do you figure maybe some of the things are? Like we've discussed a couple of them, like realizing when certain things aren't within your control. But what are certain methods that you've found have helped when it comes to you trying to help other people accept themselves and maybe getting,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to tie that back to something you mentioned just a moment ago. You use the expression become more proficient in your self acceptance. Now, very often when we use those concepts, we think of, oh, what can I do to make this instant change? Okay, but I'm glad you used the word proficient because let me ask you a different question. What would you do to become more proficient as a piano player?
What would I do? Whoa, what just fell there?
To become more proficient.
Um, I listen to good music and probably do
hmm
theory work. Uh,
More proficient.
oh,
More proficient as a performer.
like, sorry, can you define proficient then?
More accomplished,
Oh,
more
okay.
skilled,
Well, I'd say that I would continuously like try to push myself to perform certain types of songs that might be a little bit more difficult for me. Maybe find different
right?
ways to make the songs my own, so that they're
Emerald,
interesting.
Emerald Queen beat you to it, Max. She
Oh,
said practice.
well, yeah, practice, yeah.
Okay, now you're right. Challenge is great. Improving the level of challenge is great, but the key is practice. Now, to become more proficient as well, I'll give you an example. Michael Jordan, at the height of his career, when he was, breaking all the records, would go out an hour ahead of practice and by himself practice shooting the basketball over and over and over and
Mm,
over. Practice. So if you want to become good at something, you practice. So I'm thinking, and this just occurred to me in the show, one could become more self accepting if they practiced compassion over and over at every turn, over and over until it became more habitual, as opposed to a new concept. Oh, wow, I got this great idea. I'll follow this new religion and everything is fine. No, you need to get the down and garden variety practice. What can I do today to be compassionate to this person that I used to not like? Well,
Mhm.
okay, I could do this. I could do this. So practice.
Well,
I think,
uh,
yeah.
unless the religion is the Tao of Max, but aside from that,
Well,
sorry.
that's different.
Yes,
That would change the world, right?
right, absolutely. Everybody would be yellow.
Everybody would be yellow,
Hmm.
mellow yellow.
Mellow, yes, exactly. Well, I don't know about mellow. Um, yeah, anyways, I had a joke, but I'm not going to say it.
Okay, good. Good.
Let's see. Who just put in a super chat? That would be Rudiger. Rudiger says, "Can self acceptance change how I view myself?"
Absolutely.
Well, yeah.
If you tie together the things we've been talking about, the Rudiger, if you practice kindness and compassion and acceptance of others, that will send that will make the world around you more compassionate, more accepting and kind. And this will blow back in a good way on you. Sometimes, okay, this is a caveat. Sometimes a person who is compassionate and kind and gentle will be taken advantage of,
Hmm.
and they might lose money or they might be fooled by somebody, but it's worth it. It's worth it. There's a scene from a book called, not a scene, but a story from a book by, I think I have the book right in my other office. Sorry for the noise.
It's okay. I have a book called 50 Shades of Grey.
No, that's not it. It's called The Speed of Trust by Stephen M. R. Covey. Now,
Okay.
Stephen M. R. Covey's dad wrote a book about 7 habits of highly effective people. But young Stephen wrote and is doing workshops all over the world, or has been up until recently, about the power. That's one of his books, The Power of Trust. And the second is called The Speed of Trust. Now, he is saying it's way more efficient to be trusting and to trust others rather than to have to check everything. When you have to check everything, it's really slow. It makes people feel bad. It makes them feel unaccepted, untrusted. So they don't trust you. You don't trust them. Can't rely on them. And the world slows down and becomes a miserable, curt place.
Hmm.
The story I'm about to mention is of a guy who had a donut stand outside a tall building. I think it's in New York. He had this donut stand, donuts and coffee. So people would come in, they would buy a donut and a coffee on the way to shop. They'd line up, he'd make change. And it was kind of slow because the people, a lot of people were coming to these buildings and they were coming in a hurry. So they didn't feel like waiting. And he said, "This is no good. It takes me so long to do it." So one day he had this idea. He put a big bowl of change on the table and a big sign: "Order your stuff, make your own change." Wow, crazy idea, right? Crazy idea. So what would you would do is you'd go up and you would get your coffee and donut and put money in the thing and take out your change. He made more money. People didn't take as much change. The odd person might have taken, but over at the end of the day, he made more money. It's interesting. I love that story because it talks about the value of trust, but it also talks about, I trust you, I accept you, I think you'll probably not cheat me. So when you get that message from a business, maybe you don't feel like cheating because you've been, um, you know, given a kind of a positive, um, a positive lead. I trust you. You go ahead and make your change.
Hmm.
Okay, thanks. It sets a nice tone.
That is a lovely story. I just have a really hard time believing that. Maybe it's just due to
Of
my
course.
pessimistic temperament. But yeah, I suppose something like that could work just as long as there's like a heavy police presence or something.
You're not very trusting, Max.
No, I'm not. Well, I mean, I'm. But like you understand why. It's just like when, as
Of
we said
course.
earlier on about differently wired people, when so many different bad things happen over the course of your life, people do take advantage of you, and after that,
Yes,
it's really
right.
hard to get back to it.
And folks that are differently wired can be quite sensitized to that. So we uh, all have to be gentle with one another and understand that not everybody is going to arrive at self acceptance and, you know, whatever it is at the same point in time. So if somebody comes to you and they don't feel very trusting and are kind of nervous and they want you to sign stuff, it's like, okay, accept it
Mhm.
and don't make a big issue of it because that's the level of comfort they have now with the world around them.
You know what? Just uh, before we move on to the mailbag, I just want to emphasize one last thing that you said, John, because even though I have had a lot of trouble myself in regards to self acceptance, one thing that you brought up that I found has worked for me personally is this: once you are you train yourself to be conscious, mindful
Mm,
of negativity and trying to avoid it at all costs, and instead trying to make a habit out of compassion, that in and of itself makes the path towards self-acceptance uh, a whole lot more expedient and meaningful.
mm,
And I found that when it came to my YouTube channel, back in the day, I used to do a lot more political stuff and inadvertently fuel the negativity. But ever since then, I made a decision. Okay, if I'm going to put out content on the internet, I need to make a commitment to making sure that it's positive and constructive. And just by changing that mission statement, I suppose you could say, I was able to make things a whole lot better. And obviously, I still have bad days. You guys who watch the show are very aware of, my problems with anxiety like that. But things would be a whole lot worse now if I hadn't made that change. So
yeah.
if you take any message from what we said today, ladies and gentlemen, try to make it that. Try to make it a habit of yourself to be conscious of whenever something might turn negative, whether it's something that you might say or do or something that somebody else might say or do. Try to figure out a way to approach these situations in a way where you can let cooler heads prevail, whether it's your head or somebody else's. That makes sense, John?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yep. You and you have to practice it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not something that happens overnight.
That's right.
I mean, like very few people have that discipline, but you'll get there. Before we move on to the mailbag, I just wanted to ask you guys that are listening right now if you have anything you'd like to say in regards to the main topic. Maybe you have some success stories in regards to self acceptance. Maybe you have some advice that you were given that worked for you. We'd love to hear from you. Whether you're listening in the live chat right now, if you are, make sure you leave that there so that we can read the messages, which we're going to do at the end of the show, and so that John and I could talk about it. Or if you're listening to the pre-recorded version of this later, make sure to put your stories or advice down in the comment section below. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's move on to the aforementioned mailbag show. So, in case you guys don't know and have been like, this is the first show that you're watching in our Differently Wired series. Every week, what we try to do, John and I, is reach into the mailbag, into our email, and see if you guys have sent in anything to us. What we try to encourage people to do is send in questions that are related to differently wired topics. Although they don't have to be questions, they could be personal success stories or, like sometimes if you feel the need to share something that, something negative that happened to you, John and I can discuss it and we can figure out ways to turn it into something positive. Anything in regards to being differently wired, we want to hear from you. And if you want to send in that email, you can send it to us at the email address that you see on screen, which is maxderrat@yahoo.ca. That's maxderrat, all one word, at yahoo.ca. So we got a couple today. First one comes to us from Anonymous, writes, that's how I used to pronounce it when I was a kid. I'm a student at a program that helps young adults with... I'm a student at a program that helps young adults with disabilities transition to living independently, getting a job, and learn general life skills after finishing high school. For me, I have high functioning autism. I like it for the most part because I get to learn things like filling out a job application, cooking, office skills, and other important things, but I have two problems with it. One is that the building it takes place in is small and there's a lot of students and it makes me feel claustrophobic, and another problem I have are the other students that attend it. Some of them do annoying things like make noises, talk too much, move around too much, either for attention or they don't realize it that they're annoying or are too mentally challenged to know so. Reasoning with them is hard too. They ignore you or do the opposite of what you tell them to do, and some of them are too mentally challenged to be reasoned with. Thankfully, I do have friends there. They're not close friends, but I like being around them. That make the experience more tolerable, and the teachers there are great, caring people, and I like learning new life skills. It's the students I have a problem with. And I can't really ignore no matter how hard I try since they're loud and all over the place. What can I do to deal with it? This also partially involves another problem I felt like I always had. I feel like I'm not neuroatypical enough to be with neuroatypical people, but I don't think I'm neurotypical enough to be with neurotypical people. It feels like I don't belong anywhere. I'm a square peg surrounded by round holes. What are your thoughts on that? Well, I'll just
Hmm.
what I'll just do quickly. I have my own thoughts on it, but I'll just sort of relay to you how much I relate to what you said, and then John can sort of lead up off with suggestions. In regards to feeling like you can't be around neuroatypical people or neurotypical people, dude. I say how often the lives of differently wired people share frightening congruity. It's absolutely true here. I've never felt at home being around neuroatypical people or neurotypical people. And that's not to say, I find uh, people from either side to be bad people. Like, I talk to people that are neuroatypical and neurotypical in my Discord all the time, and they're wonderful people. I just have a hard time feeling like I'm with them. You know what I mean? The only time I ever really felt like comfortable being myself around people is around children. They don't judge you. Uh, and I've always personally had a weird effect on children. I don't know if it's because I'm really really tall or I'm just goofy, but they've always liked me. John, any thoughts?
Well, I noticed a few people in the chat have mentioned headphones. They're probably great. I saw a series on some Netflixy thing or other about a young fellow who was atypical, and he wore headphones a lot of places to cut down on the racket, and that's a good suggestion. Of course, it's not just the noise that's bothering.
Siri,
It's
play the best of Creed.
oh,
Play the best of the
gotta
Spice
turn
Girls.
gotta turn this down.
It's okay.
The um, the thing that I see here is this person is social, has friends, people he likes being around. There may be alliances there that he can form with people to, they can brainstorm together and figure out ways to reduce some of the distraction. Uh, he likes the teachers, so you know, you can't expect him to go to teachers and the teachers are going to say stuff that will bother the others. So it's he's kind of swim with the folks in the course that he's in. I think that's about the best way to do that.
Yeah, like you said, Anonymous, you are in a program that is meant to help people like you. And because a lot of them are like you, a lot of them will be responsive to uh, you when you say stuff like, "Hey, you're moving around too much. I'm very sensitive to like things that most people wouldn't be sensitive to. Can you please just do what you can to you know, be cognizant of that, and I'll try to be cognizant of your problems, and it creates that positive feedback loop. Like I managed to do that in my job with neurotypical people. I'm sure that if you're going to get any semblance of understanding, it's going to be from neuroatypical people. Now I understand, like you said, some of the people that you might try to impart these wishes to, they might not understand because they might be mentally handicapped, too mentally handicapped to do so. Well, in that case, your employers, they're there in order to try and help you uh, advance yourself in the workplace. And I'm sure if you bring these concerns up to them, it won't only benefit you and other people around you that might have the same concerns, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other people that participate in this program in the future, right? Because they'll be cognizant of stuff that you're going through and try to accommodate more people like you, right?
There's something just crossed my mind as you were talking about that, and that is sometimes you can make small adjustments in physical arrangements which will help those things. I noticed when I was at university, I really liked if I had to study in an open space, a study carrel was way better than an open table. So that's like three walls. You cut off your vision from other things, and it changes your ability to focus your attention. So
Hmm.
that's just one possible thing. Study rooms, study carols, locations in the rooms or the buildings themselves. Some are much more conducive to work than others. Sometimes you can, go outside in the hall. It's better. So it's good to explore different physical arrangements that work better.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that can cut down any sensory input, like you said, like just making
Yeah,
sure that everything in your peripheral vision is cut off and you can only focus on one thing. That
yeah.
certainly helped me a lot. The headphones, like you said, having certain types of music or white noise playing, that helps me out a lot,
Mm,
especially when I'm on the
mm.
job. But also, just before we move on, I want to recommend Anonymous that you sort of take solace in the success that you've had. Like you've been able to make friends, you've been able to be successful in regards to a bunch of different things, and just drawing some strength from that might be able to make the day-to-day grind of what you're doing there a bit more tolerable.
I think we shouldn't move quite on yet because the bigger question is the last paragraph.
Okay, it feels like I don't belong anywhere. I'm a square peg surrounded by round holes. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
he's he's not fitting in either world, typical or atypical. So,
Well, I understand. It sort of goes back to what we were talking about in regards to self acceptance. It's hard, but there are certain times where you have to realize that you've done all that you can, and there's only so much that you can do in the moment. Maybe you make mistakes in regards to being in a crowd of neurotypical or neuroatypical people, but then what you do is you're like, okay, I recognize those things, I can improve on them, and there are certain places where I can improve on them, and
mm.
then you have to make peace with that fact.
The other thing about Anonymous is that you, Anonymous, might be a person who will find very few that you're comfortable with. And that's okay. You're on a journey, you're on a path, and it may take a while to find people or a person or persons that you resonate well with. That's okay. You don't have to be comfortable around everyone, and you don't have to be like anyone, but you need to find people that you're comfortable being around and they're comfortable being around you. And you seem to understand that. And you're not going to conform, right? You're not going to be just like disappearing into the wallpaper like everyone, uh, like you're like a pattern like everyone else. You're going to stand out. You're going to be you're going to have talents and skills and insights that are unique. And so I would seek here a very small number of people that you can talk to comfortably rather than a large number.
Hmm. Yeah, it like sort of be like me. I don't have very many friends, but I much prefer to have one or two really, really, really good friends that I can trust and that would do anything for me and I do anything for them than trying to appeal to everybody all at the same time.
Hmm.
You know, in that respect, just if you're getting along with certain people, see if there are ways that you can sort of enhance those pre-existing friendships. You know, that would be something I try to do. Okay. Gestalt Y leaves this comment in the chat. He says, he quoted me from before. The only time I'm comfortable is when I'm around children. I'm sorry, Max, but can you repeat that so the FBI agent in your computer can hear that? Wow. that's that's not what I meant at all. Thanks, Gestalt. I don't know how to respond to that.
Well, just laugh.
Yeah, just laugh. Yeah. Anyways, thank you very much, Anonymous. Thank you very much, Gestalt, for giving John that reason to laugh at me, because I'm always the one that's laughing at him. Anyways, uh, moving on to question 2. Darth Escar 98 writes, "Hey, so I very rarely trust people to do things unless it's in their best interest to do anyway. I mainly figure out and do things for myself, which mostly works well as far as I can tell. I have a history of hallucinations, which often make good reason to doubt, but I can still eventually determine things to be just about insured based on probability. Occasionally, I figure something which people would slash do consider crazy. The newest one of those is what actually motivated me to make this email. I think if I told people what it was, they wouldn't just dismiss the possibility, but even doubt the fact that I believe it. Anyway, people's individual minds have their limits and imperfections to be cautious of, which is why I try to use what other people claim in whatever ways I can, but also take it with a grain of salt because they have their imperfections too, plus are often dishonest. How should people go about figuring things out, especially things that matter in situations like this? Um, okay, I read this before, read it again, and I read it here on the show. I think I understand what you're saying, and like John, just sort of correct me if like I get this wrong, but I think I got it right. Is he saying that because human beings are often imperfect in their assertions or in the things that they say, maybe they're not entirely honest about everything that they say, that it, it might it, if they're not upfront and honest about those things all the time and we're not always wary of them, we will constantly find ourselves in bad situations. Is that sort of what he's saying?
Well, I'm looking at it just from his point of view.
Hmm.
If I can try to slide over to the lens, he doesn't trust himself. I have a history of hallucination. So how does he know what's real in his head,
Yeah.
right? So, and he has detected, being clever, he has detected that people act in their own self-interest quite often. Not absolutely always, but quite often they take advantage. So he's seen enough of people taking advantage and doing things in their best interest that he's grown rather jaded
Mm.
about humankind, and he kind of expects he's always got to be a little careful,
Yeah, on guard. Yeah, okay, I understand.
always on guard. Now, that's good to a point if you're strolling at midnight down a street in Tijuana to be a little bit on guard, but you don't actually have to go through your life in a guarded way. He may take a while to get out of it, but it's an uncomfortable place to be because it means you're always doubting things, you're always skeptical about things. Uh, I suggest this person he needs something that's mindfulness about it, something meditative about it, something of a spiritual nature that allows him to let go some of this internal doubt, if that's possible,
Mm.
because it's like tense. So, how should people go about figuring things out? You've got to kind of change the way you look at things. Um, because what's happening, the problem is he's going to someone asking for advice, but he's doubting and taking with a grain of salt the advice he's getting. So he's never quite comfortable. He's got to, oh, I know the path. Death Star, you've got to learn to let go some little tiny doubts about some little tiny things to practice becoming more trusting.
Mm.
No, not about the big things, the big things, but about little things. Like learn to practice a little bit of trusting this. I think you'll be more comfortable, even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah, it sort of goes back to what we were saying earlier on in the show in regards to changing uh, your attitude so that you're not always in a negative mind space.
Yeah,
You should try and experiment. Like I understand, like the need to have sort of a ever-present sense of skepticism. I understand that, but when it gets to the point where it invades every possible aspect of your life and poisons it, that's not a healthy way to live. So you sort of have to experiment, like John said, try to see what happens when you try to be a little bit more trusting or a lot more trusting, and try to find a happy medium for yourself so that you get to the point where you're not always questioning people. Another good thing to sort of build a firm foundation for yourself to grow up from is maybe talk to a counselor, talk to a therapist, somebody that will be honest with you and will have a rapport with you, and so that way you can talk to somebody where you don't have to constantly worry about whether or not they're telling you the truth, because they
that's
will
a
tell you the
really good
truth.
idea. That's
Yeah.
a really good idea. That's, you know, and it may take a while to find exactly the right person, but it's worth a search for someone who's really gentle
Yeah.
and really non-judgmental.
And when you have that firm foundation to build off of, then you can talk with that person about maybe expanding your sphere of
Yeah,
your social sphere. You can get
yeah.
one friend, and then you can get maybe two friends, or however many friends you desire. And then once you do that, you'll have a constant. If you have constant contact with these people, you'll completely forget your desire to be untrusting and skeptical of everything that people say, and it'll just happen naturally.
Back into the theme of self-acceptance, I think it's a good idea not to feel badly about yourself being careful. It's just a phase. It's just you're being careful. You've observed some problems and you've dealt with them, and now you can tweak your next experiences based on the learning you had from the other one. So it's not like you don't have to misjudge or judge yourself harshly just because you were a bit cautious. That's
Hmm.
that's okay.
Absolutely. We just have a few minutes left. I'm just going to take a quick look through the live chat before you have to dip out, John.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, actually, let me. Can I bring up the chat? Do I have it here, or did I delete it? I think I deleted it. My bad. Sorry about that. I'll try to bring it up next week. Let's see. La 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 la. Oh, Caleb Stefan says, as someone who has a diagnosis of being on the spectrum, I've always found the harder you look for acceptance socially, the more you become alienated because it's an imitation, and normies detect that.
Yeah.
Do you know what a normie is, John?
Yeah. Actually, it's an interesting theme that comes up in my work all the time, and all the time. The harder you chase something, the more it runs away.
Hmm.
So if you go around saying, "Oh, I want to be like, Charlie Chaplin or Marilyn Monroe or Donald Trump or something," it's going to be a problem because whatever one you pick, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah,
So you
especially if you're
need.
Donald Trump, you're going to scare people by making people think that you're an orangutan.
Yeah, can you imagine him in a dress over a grate in the subway in New York? No, I don't even want to think about.
Great. That image is going to be in my head for the rest of the week. Thanks a lot, John. What did I do to
I,
you? Did I
I
hurt you in
couldn't
some way?
I couldn't resist that. But
God damn it.
it's a beautiful point that he makes. If you chase something, what do you learn by chasing something? It runs away. So you need to step back from this chasing, allow things to happen, let them come to you, let them happen, or let them go. And it's a calmer thing. So if imagine going to a party. Oh, I look at her, I look at him, they're so cool. Oh, look at the way they're holding their cigarettes. Oh, we can't do that anymore. Or look at the way they're holding their wine, or they're doing something. I must copy that.
Mhm.
That's ridiculous. You know.
Look at the way they're holding their avocado on toast.
Yes, there you go. Now, there might be some advantage in observing how you don't drop your avocado down your cleavage. However, beyond noticing that you hold the avocado up, I wouldn't ape anybody any more than that.
There's so many jokes there, but we have to finish the show. Okay. All right. Just very quickly before we go, Point Creation sends in another super chat. Thank you so much for your constant support of the show. We really, really do appreciate it. You are the man. He says, I accept I need to get better at pulling myself out of holes from effing up myself. Can't avoid falling in. Well, I mean, like, it's sort of inevitable. We are going to fall into holes. That's sort of what life is. It's just a matter of, you know,
Well, to start with, you're identifying your point creation. You're identifying what you want to do, what you need to do, and uh, it's gentle with yourself to start with. Okay, you've learned this is always a problem. This is always a trap. Okay, I can do that a little differently this way.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so we have reached the end of the hour. John has to dip out. Thank you so much,
I do.
John. As always, I will look forward to doing this with you again next week.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll just do all the usual stuff to close out the show. I'll talk to you later.
See you later. Good night,
All
everybody.
right, so everybody, thanks again so much for listening to the Differently Wired Show, episode 42. Listen, I just want to remind you guys, if you have any questions or stories that you want to share at any time, make sure to email us at maxderrat@yahoo.ca. I did all the, recommending you the subscribe star stuff. Oh yeah, I just want to remind you, in case some of you weren't here at the beginning of the show, We normally do have an after show for the show. If you're a Subscribe Star supporter, you get access to the after show chat that you see here on screen right now. However, we don't have time for that because I have an appointment with somebody tonight. However, to make it up to you guys, what you will be seeing over the next few days, all the way up until Black Friday, are discounts for my Subscribe Star campaign. I won't tell you when those go live just yet. You have to be paying attention. But there will be a couple of different ones, so be on the lookout for that. However, I understand not everybody has any financial means, especially differently wired people, and that's fine. I understand. But if you do want to support me in other ways, the most helpful thing that you guys can do, and I sincerely mean this, is sharing this video. This video or any of the other videos on my channel, really, that is the best thing that you guys can do. When you do that, and more people click on the video, it tells the YouTube algorithm that my content is worth watching. It puts it in other people's recommended feeds. And who knows, maybe there's a differently wired person out there that's currently struggling and might need a community like the one that we have right now, a positive, calm community where they can go to people and talk to them, people that won't judge them, give them advice and resources. So yeah, please share the video. And I think that's about it. Once again, guys, thank you so much for joining us. And until we do this again next week, I just want to remind you, stay yellow.